or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stockbox interview.
Okay, Theo, I'm just quickly running through the presentation here. I don't want to spend too much time on it because I know people want to ask questions about it. For everybody on the line, Theo obviously has joined us over the course of this year, a key member of this leadership team, and I cannot emphasize enough how critical Theo is to the success of this business, given his background in South Africa, his background with this very asset, and his general skill sets, his drive, his determination, his enthusiasm, and his will to get involved and get this going. So, I'm not going to be the only one talking here. I'm just doing the quick intro and then he can jump in. But look, Neo, as I was just saying, we've entered into a series of agreements which have really are going to transform the nature of this business from a company that listed on the back of an asset in the Northern Cape, very significant, a very attractive uranium asset that Anglo American obviously invested $30 million in terms of taking that up to a positive feasibility study, to now entering into a series of transactions which have given us, subject to the various regulatory approvals and completing the transaction, a resource base of 124 million pounds of uranium, some 5.4 million ounces of gold. And look, with current valuations, that's over $20 billion of in situ value. Okay. And I know a lot of people refer to in situ value, but that value is mineral resources that can be readily developed, readily accessed, given the infrastructure that clearly we are looking to acquire as part of these transactions. And when you look at the presentation, you see a lot of images there of that Beatrix 4 shaft complex. And look, that was a shaft complex and a mining operation that back in its earlier days, Theo was very much involved with. So we are looking at reopening that Beza uranium mine using that Beatrix 4 shaft complex. That is going to require an upgrade to that plant, the installation of a new uranium plant there. There is a gold plant there, the refurbishment of the shaft, but there is the underground development in place that allows the access to existing gold and uranium resources that have been, where the development is there, has been completed, and allows for the stoping to be completed. As I said, there's a series of assets there, all very attractive, all company makers in their own right. But clearly, our immediate focus here is on that Beza uranium mine and what that gives us in partnership with our major shareholder, Stillwater Sibanye. As an update there, the regulatory process with the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, the approvals were sought and all the applications were lodged earlier this year by Sibanye Stillwater. We put out an RNS on that, and that is in process. That is a process which is well established in South Africa and just requires a time and a review and a sign-off there. Clearly, we've inherited assets, not just with the infrastructure, but where those development studies have previously been completed by Sibanye. Those development studies are going to be the subject of what Theo is reviewing, and we're making it our own, or making them our own. How Sibanye would go about this as a multi-billion-dollar company is very different to how we would go about it, clearly as a more junior, emerging uranium and gold producer, looking to obviously maximize cash flow and accelerate the time to get into that production. But as I said, each of those assets for any other company are company makers. And clearly we completed a series of transactions, not one, not two, but three, which we executed, which are now subject to the various approvals to get completed. On that presentation, you see us talking about that Sibanye Stillwater transaction. It is without question a company making deal with them. We will be joined by them they will join us on the board with two of their nominees. They will have that preemptive right to participate in the future fundraisings. And they clearly have other uranium production development assets in South Africa, which clearly give us an opportunity to look at as this relationship is strengthened. Why is Sibanye doing this? Clearly, they have commitments in some of their other developments. No question about that. But they've got a track record of doing this. And perhaps Theo can talk about this in more detail. But they did a transaction similar to this, where they effectively put assets into a company called DRD Gold. That allowed DRD Gold to focus on a number of transactions and projects in regards to gold tailings. DRD Gold has been a very good standout performer in South Africa, and certainly in terms of getting returns for its shareholders. I may just I've talked a little bit already. I just may want Theo just to jump in now, if that's okay, and just talk about South Africa. South Africa is a very well-established uranium mining center. Theo's worked in that environment. It's the first world mining infrastructure. So Theo, on that presentation, we talked about, South Africa, how well it's positioned globally, but also just to talk about the regulatory environment, which allows us to move ahead here. I just wondered if you want to talk about that quickly.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity, Jason. Again, I can just introduce myself. My name's Theo Batulis. I'm a mining engineer. I worked on what was then known as the Oryx mine between 1990 and 1992. I was involved in the shaft sinking. I was there basically for 2 years. The history of that particular shaft and that particular mine was that in the 1980s, a South African company called Gencor started the mine as a uranium mine and sank the main shaft to mine uranium. In the 80s, the uranium mine collapsed, and in the early 90s, Gencor used that access shaft to sink another subvertical shaft and to access the gold in what is known as the Kalkoenkrans Reef, that is further, that is deeper. It then became a gold mine. It was acquired by then Goldfields and then by Sibanye-Stillwater, and now it's being acquired by us as a uranium play, a dedicated uranium play. Basically, if you take a look at the Witwatersrand Basin, I was speaking to the geologists when I was working with them just the other day. The Witwatersrand Basin remains the greatest and biggest deposit of uranium and gold on the planet. There's nothing that compares to it. It is just absolutely massive. And I don't think people really understand the size and the scale of the Beatrix 4 shaft project. Okay, there is a shaft down to 1,100 meters. The mining is done between 350 and 900 meters. It's conventional South African or conventional breast stoping, nothing complicated about the mining method. By South African standards and the Welkom Goldfield, it's reasonably shallow. There are much deeper ore bodies that are mined at 2 kilometers and even deeper than that. So we don't have any seismicity issues. We don't have any, we've only got basically what they call dead weight problems, okay? The ore body, if you've looked at the investor memorandum, is it goes from basically along dip. It goes from west to east, but this ore body is a folded structure. Just to the west of the shaft, you've got this huge fold which actually dips from east to west, then goes vertical, and it goes right down to depth and goes down around about 2,000 meters. It's a series of reef. Amongst them, you've got the Beatrix Reef, you've got the Leader Reef, you've got a whole series of reefs that are mined for uranium and for gold. So the first thing that we do have is an access, which is the shaft. As Jason correctly said, I'd estimate that to redo that infrastructure would cost around about a couple of $100 million just to replace what there already is. So this is a ready-to-go mine. We are at the moment, not as Jason said, Sibanye-Stillwater have done studies. We are doing what we would term an implementation assessment, taking a look at how we're going to implement the project, what we have to do, starting with the geology, starting with the geological block model, taking a look at the mining layouts that have already been done, and basically revising and updating the numbers, uranium price, costs, that sort of that sort of thing. So if you take a look at this actual model that's been done and the amount of work that's been done, that's also several months worth of work, and maybe a year even, significant study done by Sibanye-Stillwater, and what we will do is an implementation assessment. What we will definitely do is on the Bison North and Bison South sections, we will do a study there to see and to consider how to merge the two ore bodies or the two sections together, given that there's 37 kilometers of strike. And again, I'd just like to reiterate that this is a huge ore body. It's a huge mining opportunity. And just on the Beatrix 4 shaft alone, looking at the tonnage we have there, we've got 27 million pounds of uranium, another 19 Beatrix, Bison North and Bison South. But just on that mine alone, we've got a 7.5-year life, maybe a bit longer. By the time we get to Bison North and Bison South, to the extensions, that'll be really a long time out. I'll probably have met my maker by then. It'll be this is going to have quite a long life of mine as it's developed. So just from that perspective, just the deposit itself is huge. As Jason has mentioned, we're in South Africa. It's a very regulated environment. There are a lot of laws, both through the DMRE. One of the issues that we face is we have to get a Section 11 consent. We are working together with Sibanye-Stillwater to get that through the DMRE, where we are then permitted to take over the mine and progress it. The other more important, which many people in this country, or not many people, don't realize, is that once you've got your mineral right, that's not the end of it. In this country, we are very regulated. We've got an 80-year history of mining uranium and processing uranium. We've got a nuclear reactor down in Cape Town. We've got a nuclear research facility in Hartbeespoort in South Africa called Pelindaba. So we've got a very regulated and environment when it comes to nuclear materials. Now, once you get a prospecting right in this country, you can't just start mining and exploring. You've got to get what they call a certificate of registration from the National Nuclear Regulator, which allows you to handle and mine and explore for natural radioactive materials. So if you don't have that, your mining right and your prospecting right aren't complete. It's a regulation associated with uranium and nuclear materials, okay, and naturally occurring nuclear materials. So that's another important thing to consider when you're looking at a prospecting right and an exploration program. We've been working on that for several months now, getting our paperwork done into the nuclear regulators' offices, so that when we are granted the Section 11 consent by the minister, we can have that in place as well. So that work has been ongoing, and we've done a lot in that regard. Just with regard to other work, we've contemplated, we in a very regulated environment. At this point in time, uranium, as Jason pointed out, There's going to be a shortage of uranium. I see the South African government have also announced today that they'd like to go to the nuclear solution for power generation. It's a buzzword at the moment worldwide. There's going to be a deficit of uranium supply, and we have the uranium to provide the markets. However, because it's such a strategic mineral and also has some other risks associated with it in terms of who actually gets their hands on it, we're also in a very, very regulated environment when it comes to security and how we account for all the uranium production. So if I can just start and just tell you what we're going to do first. We're at this point in time, we're looking at the geological models. We will have to, when we get permission to go onto site, we will look at what we have to do to refurbish the shafts. Because there are two shafts. Basically, there's a main shaft, which is for men and materials, and then there's a ventilation shaft where the upcast air comes out. The intake air goes down the main shaft. The upcast comes, the exit air, or the upcast air comes out of the ventilation shaft, and the ventilation shaft is also there to provide what under the South African laws, what we call a second escape way. So if anything happens in the main shaft, you've got a second escape way, and that is in place. It's always been there, and it's always operated like that. So we're going to have to look at opening up both those shafts to get access to the ore body. Once we've done that, we're looking at the mining infrastructure and the condition of the rock and the tunnels at depth. They should be pretty good. As I said, it's a dead weight problem. There's no seismicity or any kind of rock mechanics issues there, and I don't expect it to be any problems. So opening the shaft and getting into the old stopes and developing new face. We've got through the Sibanye study, we know how much face length we've got. We know how much tonnage we can generate. We know all of these things through the Sibanye study, which is again pretty comprehensive. It's a big job, but not a difficult one. It just has to be done systematically, and we have to just take it step by step and get the job done. Then we move over to the mechanical equipment, the winders we have to refurbish. We've got the main fans we have to refurbish. Some of the surface infrastructure is damaged. We're going to have to repair that. And then after that, we're going to have to go into the plant. Now, there are two basic ways of extracting uranium. The one is resin in pulp, and the other one is sulfuric acid leach. To produce what we call ammonium uranate, which is yellow cake, basically what we call yellow cake. We've got a fully equipped plant. There's sections of it which will have to be either removed or adjusted. We'll have to add circuits. We're evaluating that at the moment. There are process engineers looking at that. And we've got a fully equipped smelt house. We've got power. Power is not an issue in the Welkom area for big, large South African mines. They've got constant power feed. We've got infrastructure. We've got easy access. So the basic infrastructure is there: tailings deposition facilities, evaporation dams. Everything's in place. Like I said, to replicate that infrastructure from scratch in the modern world would cost you, I'd say, well north of $500 million. So just the value of the asset alone and the replacement value underpins any value that you might consider in the value of this company. That is basically the asset making, or the company making asset. I was looking at the valuations of some of the other uranium companies, and I was looking at some of the other uranium companies today, and they valued at around about $2.50 per pound in the ground in situ. We valued it around about now, where the share price is now, around about 18 cents. So it gives you some idea that all the value in this particular company and all the pressure is upwards in value, because it's there, it exists, you can go and have a look at it, you can touch it, and the ore underground is there, more importantly. And as I said, it's a massive ore body, take a long time, maybe 70-year life of mine before it's all mined out, maybe even longer. 30 kilometers of strike, this huge ore body underground with various reefs. I mean, there's not only one reef. There's, like I said, you've got Leader Reef, you've got Beatrix Reef, you've got several reefs down there in the structure. So yes, it's to me, it's a really, really solid project, and I look forward to developing it. That's about it. Jason, I don't know if you need me to say anything else.
No, I think you've touched on it there. I mean, look, clearly, we're really getting our teeth into it, and I think, the focus we got for this clearly on the back of us being a uranium company. And we're not going to talk this evening about the fundamentals for uranium. I think everybody can do their own research and analysis on that. But I mean, one of the great benefits from this, as we've said, is the associated gold with this. And I think we all know as well how that gold market has gone over the past 12 months and longer. It keeps going to record highs. Even when it comes off, it's still over $4,000 an ounce. So the project economics, when you look at this, are fantastic. You've got two of probably some of the best performing commodity groups out there at the moment, and we have the ability to develop those resources, to mine those resources, to process and get those resources to market relatively quickly, given the infrastructure, given the team, and given the first world environment that we're operating in from a mining perspective. There's very few other uranium projects, even very few other gold projects that can boast of the infrastructure that Theo's just talked about there. So we are in a very strong position. Clearly, there's still a lot of work to be done. Our focus here on that Beatrix 4 shaft complex, that Besa uranium and gold mine. But I truly believe that with the team that Theo is building and building around him from a human resource base in South Africa that has some of the most skilled mining people in the world, I think we will be in a very strong position as we move through the balance of this year and into 2026. So with that said, over to Mark. I think that's all we want to say. Go on.
If I could just add a little bit more, Jason, just on the costs. Okay, if you're looking at your costs between $35 and $40 a pound, that's a pure uranium cost. If you decide to add the gold credit back to that, this becomes you add that downwards to the gold credit. There, you're going down to $25 a pound. We can mine around about, just looking at the rough models, we still have to sharpen our pencils and do a really in-depth assessment. We can mine down to $45 a pound. And that's adding the gold credit back will keep us in the game. Okay, the other thing is, for every $10 a pound increase in the uranium price, on the basic model we've got, you add $50 million to the NPV. So it's very sensitive. If you add 10% to the costs, the NPV decreases by 3%. So these are just basic numbers we're looking at, and what it does actually show us, it's not a thing that it's nothing that we can write down in stone yet, but it certainly shows us that this is an incredibly robust project, and it's extremely doable. Okay, that's me. And then just sorry, the last thing is, we're in a gold mining area. We're in a town called Welkom. It's a gold mining town. It was actually built to house gold mines by Anglo American. If you go there, there's every kind of service that you require, good infrastructure and everything. So we're in the right place at the right time. Thank you very much, Jason.
Okay, well, thank you both very much, Theo and Jason there. So it's good to hear that. That's quite a very in-depth presentation on what's to come, but it's nice to hear from you, Theo, of course, the man at the helm. There are some things I'd like to follow up on, but it's good to hear things that are moving. It seems to be moving, seem to have a bit of a plan there. I do recall the IPO a couple of years ago, and yeah, not a lot happened, I would say, perhaps at the speed of we would like to have seen. So we can maybe follow up on those things just maybe towards the end. But I do want to get on to the questions. That's the most important reason that we're here today. So I don't know how we want to tackle this. We've got them separated into different sections. Jason, I don't know if you want to then just decide who takes the answer for each one or just work it out in the moment. But the first section we're going to cover is on funding and capital raises. And if we can keep the answers fairly short, that would really help on the time. So the first question that we have here is, will the next placing be offered to existing shareholders?
Yes, always.
Okay. Good. Question 2. In July and June and July, there were reports of NEO seeking to raise £2 to £5 million as an interim funding opportunity. What or where did this initiative progress to?
We identified that the study work that Theo referred to, there was going to be in the range of that 2 to 5 million to get a lot of that work going. We've not progressed that. We've been focused on doing that work, call it in-house or with Theo's consultants there. We've also been focused, obviously, on ensuring that we relist as soonest as we can. And obviously, we've been looking at the debt side of the balance sheet to facilitate all funding coming through. Clearly, the debt side of the balance sheet has improved significantly given where commodity prices have gone recently.
And why was this funding route pursued when we were previously informed by Jason that NEO was inundated with streaming funding offers?
I think I just mentioned that. I said we identified that as a funding requirement. We have not progressed that funding to a point of executing it because there is streaming and royalty and other funding offers available. And given the dramatic change in the commodities that we operate in, we're probably very fortunate that you don't jump into bed with the first person that you shake hands with or you meet in the bar. So we did not progress that because there were a significant amount of other offers which come through. So yeah, we continue to move and work out what is best for this company from a funding point of view. And yeah, we're very fortunate that the market for the funding mechanisms that we're targeting has improved dramatically over recent months, over the past 3, 4, 5, 6 months.
Okay, good. And depending on how much you raise, do you have any idea how much is expected to be debt versus equity?
No, the board will make a decision upon that to get that mix right. So again, we're fortunate. We're very fortunate that we've got assets which are significantly enough advanced to give lenders from the debt side of the balance sheet a lot of comfort. Yeah, as Theo's just mentioned, we've got significant infrastructure in place and an ability to get product to market a lot quicker than others developing a greenfields mine. So that mix of how we progress things will be determined by the board once we have everything in front of us and can make a well-informed and balanced opinion or decision. Sorry.
I think, Jason, if I can add there, that goes to do with the cost of capital, where a share price will be at any given time. So at the initial capital will be equity capital to be raised to do the implementation assessment, start taking control of the sites, start doing the detailed metallurgical work, that type of thing. Once we've done our implementation assessments and we've got really accurate forecast models as we run our Monte Carlo simulations and variance towers on grade and understand exactly what our production profile looks like, at that point, you can start looking at offtake agreements and looking at debt equity ratios and what you can finance to debt and what you can finance to equity. But I think at this point in time, it's a little premature. I would, at this exact point in time, I think it would be, I don't think it would be prudent for us to be giving or signing offtake agreements, simply because in the first, we don't even know exactly what our forecast production is going to be. You need to know that. And secondly, I think we're going to be giving away a lot of the upside. So I think in terms of shareholder value, I think the best short-term route forward is the initial capital raise that we're going to do, and that is going to be an equity placement. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just finally on this section, has the company received or utilised the reported £200 million investment from the Swiss fund? And if so, what is the current status of those funds?
We've got advisors out there that have been putting various high-level offers across the table. As Theo has just mentioned, to give up. We haven't drawn down on any debt funding. If we had, we would have obviously announced that. What we're hoping is that as we progress this, as we relist, clearly there's a lot of news which is expected by the market and from the various debt side of the balance sheets, as and when things are finalized there, which are at the point where they're going to give us the maximum amount of value, then clearly we go down that. Our advisor, our debt advisor, as people know, we appointed was Bacchus Capital. Bacchus Capital were very much involved in the uranium sector. They founded Yellowcake. They managed that uranium offtake and purchase agreement for Yellowcake with the Kazakhs. So yes, there is capital there, but we've got to make sure that the capital that comes into this business is right for the business. I've seen there's a couple of other uranium development companies out there that have given up an awful lot early on. One of the companies that we were previously compared to quite significantly when we were just focused on Hencrease is an ASX listed company called Aura Energy. I'm not here to bag companies, don't get me wrong, but very early on they did they committed some of their offtake to a UK based group. I think it was Curzon. Curzon have got a fantastic deal there. Aura Energy, theirs is a sand-hosted uranium deposit. So quite similar comparables to what we've got at Hencrease, but they seem to have certainly gone into it early and given up a lot of upside on that uranium transaction, so much so that I think it's been renegotiated on 2 or 3 occasions as the market has moved significantly. As part of that deal, they had to give up a lot of equity upside, a number of warrants and so on and so forth. So, we've got to do this in the right way. We've got such an opportunity with this asset. As Theo's mentioned, it's a world-class asset. The gold, uranium, the infrastructure in place. Companies of our size, of our nature, and only being, literally having been around less than 2 years or so, we don't get, companies like us don't usually get opportunities like this. And I think we've got to make sure we do it right to be true and fair to the shareholders in terms of the returns which we're expecting to come through a very strong share price appreciation once we relist.
Thank you, Jason. I just want to clarify, it was 200 million shares, not pounds. Is that right?
I don't know.
Well, I just saw a comment in the group.
No. I think when they were talking about that, sorry, it was, we've had numbers bandied around at us, which are completely, plucked from the air.
Okay.
The stuff which was proposed, there was equity funds out of the Middle East, which were proposed. That was through introduction through a former director and group out of South Africa. But again, we will release all reports as and when they come through. So any news on funding secured and so on, that will follow once it's formally secured, signed, sealed, and announced to the market.
Okay, thank you. And just before we move on, I just want to pick up on a comment someone said. Doesn't sound like there is urgency to secure financing. So what has been going on in the next 6 months? I don't know if you want to make a comment on that, Jason.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question. Could you repeat the question, please?
It was a comment that someone has made. It doesn't that they said it doesn't sound like there is any urgency to secure funding. So what's going to happen in the next 6 months?
Trust me, there is urgency.
Okay.
Trust me when I tell you there's urgency. Okay, definitely. Again, I don't want to preempt anything, but we're dependent on publishing our financial statements. What that happens, that's going to set up a series of events that we can get this initial capital in to form the base for the company to create a solid foundation. And once we've done that and we've sharpened our pencils, we've got accurate forecasts, we've done our work, then we'll definitely go for the significant capital that will be required to build the mine. How that's going to be split between debt and equity, we'll still decide. We'll have a look at what our forecasts show us, what our models show us, and what the market shows us and what the advisors tell us. We'll take all the information and we'll make a decision at that point. But trust me, if I tell you there is a lot of urgency. I've been here for 5 months and I'd like to get this mine up and going sooner rather than later. And it's taken a little bit longer than I thought it would. Again, there's a lot of things that are within our control, that we can control. And then there are things that are not in our control, which are in the hands of other people, regulators, accountants, auditors, that type of thing. So everything within my control, please understand, I push as hard as I can, and there's a huge sense of urgency here to get this done.
Okay, thank you, Theo. So let's move on to talk about basically a project then. So the question I have here, first of all, is the acquisition announcement for Sunshine Minerals stated that completion would involve a 7.5 million cash payment and 8.5 million in shares issued at 1.25 pence. Has this settlement been completed? And if not, what's the current status?
Yeah, Mark, no, the transaction is not completed. Otherwise, we would have announced it. The completion of all the transactions require primarily regulatory approval because you're transferring licenses and ownership of those licenses. And that is a process which myself and Theo have mentioned there in regards to the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, the Section 102, the Section 11. So those processes are all advancing. So that is the status of that. There's no doubt the immediate focus is on the Sibanye transaction because that unlocks the license to the north and unlocks the license to the south. Without the Beatrix 4 plant infrastructure, etc., those are just stranded assets. Consolidating that whole area with the shaft there gives it substance, gives it an ability to be advanced. So that's the status there.
I think that's correct, Jason. Basically, the principal asset here is the Beatrix, the Beatrix 4 shaft. That is the key to everything, and that's as simple as that. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Is the transfer of ownership from Sibanye-Stillwater the key factor in unlocking financing and offtake agreements? And is this part of the reason for NEO remaining in suspension?
Clearly, any financing that's going to be secured from an offtake, from a major funding basis for that Beatrix requires us to own the asset. For us to own the asset, it requires the transfer of that ownership and the approval by the DMRE of the Section 102 and Section 11 approvals. That is not the reason for NEO remaining in suspension. The reason we're remaining in suspension is because the auditors, the accountants are finalising the final sign-offs on those accounts.
Okay, thank you. And just on that point, while you've mentioned it, where are you with that? I see people really saying the only thing that really matters is audits and relisting. I don't know what you can say on that, Jason, but where are you on that, do you think?
Look, we were anticipating being able to come out today and obviously, well, not just today, but last week to basically confirm that everything is done. And obviously people could see accounts lodged and so on and so forth. So that's been finalized. It's in the final stages. I think people are getting bored with people saying final. But no, that's it. It has been a process. There's no question about that. Having MKS, Moore Stevens involved has been a fantastic process, but they've gone right back to the RTO that took 2 years, if people remember, to get into Stranger Holdings. So it's been a very thorough process. Andrew Searle is an incredibly meticulous and thorough person. He's been supported certainly by Martin out of South Africa and a number of others there, but that process is ongoing and we're anticipating having that completed very, very shortly.
Okay, well, it's good to hear. You were perhaps hoping that today. It's obviously eluding you still. But yeah, that is obviously very key for shareholders. The next question I have is probably more for Theo. So once the funding is secured, how long will it take to refurbish the Bezier shaft and mine site before ore extraction can commence? And when might production realistically begin?
Well, okay, that's the golden question. That's the implementation assessment that we've got to do, which we've already started. Like I said, it's a whole lot of infrastructure that has to be, some of it repaired, some of it rebuilt, some of it just serviced. There's a whole lot of appointments that have to be done in South African law. We've got to appoint certificated engineers for the heavy equipment, for the main fans, for the winders, for the plant. We've got to appoint people according to the regulations in South Africa, and they've got to be qualified people, and they sign basically their legal letters of appointment. At the initial stages, I'll take the appointment as in the general manager. I'll sign those appointments and those legal appointments where I'm basically held responsible for the legal for the implementation of the mining laws in South Africa on the site, and that flows down to the managers, the underground managers, the mine captains. They're all certificated people. They issued what they call government certificates of competency. We've got to put them all in place. So we're starting on the surface. We're going to then go down into the plant site. We've got to go get in and refurbish the shaft. So I'd say if all goes well, 18 months, we should be at a point where we can start looking at drilling and blasting again. But again, I've got to go and sit down and do the work and get the whole team to provide their inputs and see how quickly we can do stuff. Anything is possible if you've got the money. So we've got to raise the money, do the initial work, and understand how much capital is required to get this up and going. And then it's basically a timeline.
Do you have an idea at this point what that would look like, or do you have to wait? I'm talking in terms of what it might cost to get to that point.
I think I can guess, but at this point in time, I prefer to do the work, and I'd prefer to calculate it accurately and give you a proper number. We've got a range of numbers from $80 million to $120 million capital expenditure. The others have looked at it and said lower than that. But as this mine has been put in care and maintenance, doesn't matter how far you put it in care and maintenance, things are still going to regress or corrode. So the faster we get there and start working, the better for us. So I'd like to just be able to do these implementation assessments first and get really accurate numbers. But it's definitely not going to be $500 million. That's the replacement value. It's not going to be 200. It's around about, I would guess, ultimately in the end, around about $100 million to get it up and going.
Okay, thank you. The next question on this subject was about prior mention of reprocessing tailings. Will this proceed immediately, or is it contingent upon completion of a bolt-on uranium processing plant?
We have got tailings dams in place. I've inspected the tailings dam. They're in very good condition. I've got absolutely no intention of mining tailings. We looked for a waste rock dump that we might be able to process, because there's usually ore inside the waste rock dumps. It's been already mined away. It's been taken away. So the tailings dams, to me, the more important question is, are they competent? Are they still standing? What's the integrity of the structures? And they are looking pretty good. That is a major capital item, and it's a major regulatory item to build a tailings dam from scratch. There's all kinds of new laws that we have to implement, but those tailings dams are pre-2004 tailings dams, so the previous laws apply to them. The tailings dams are in place, and the tailings dams are important for us because that's where the first material that we're going to start processing will come from underground. We have to deposit it somewhere, and we've got enough space in the tailings dams. We've also got the evaporation dams that will handle the underground water being pumped out. They're in place. So all the basic infrastructure that would cost you a couple of 100 million rand to implement is already there. But no, there's no intention of mining tailings at this point in time at all.
Okay, thank you. So we're about halfway through. So this is quite good. I think we're getting through them quite quick. We're getting on to Hencrease now. So the first question I have on Hencrease is, how is the company progressing with the Hencrease drilling program, and what are the development plans for this asset?
Right, on the Hencrease drilling program, as I stated before, there is a resource there. Some work's been done on the northern side. The one prospecting right is going to become problematic for the simple reason we do not have a national nuclear regulator license to handle natural radioactive material. So I cannot start drilling anything until that's issued. So there's a bit of work to be done there. There's some questions about a prospecting right on that particular area. So we're basically reviewing that project and seeing how it fits in and what the risks are to the company. But the one at the top, Hencrease itself, that one seems to have quite a lot of work done on it. And at this point, we're making application for a mining right. We're doing the environmental management program for it. And we're doing all the other regulatory requirements that we are required to do. They're being addressed, and we started that process about 4 weeks ago. So we can make application for a mining right on that part of the project.
Okay, so and in terms of sort of drilling contractors, that's not been arranged yet, I guess.
No, it's we've retained a geologist, and the geologist is taking a look at what we require to what is required to do. What is required to be done, lay out an additional exploration program for us. Another important thing is, as Jason said, if we do any other transactions, we'll immediately release an announcement. But at this point in time, there are quite a few people that are arriving with some very interesting projects that we're taking a look at. But again, these projects have to meet certain criteria, and one of those is, how will it influence our activities at Beatrix 4 shaft? That is our principal asset. And again, I would like to reiterate, everything else compared to that, and that ore body pales into insignificance. That is a massive, massive ore body and a massive mine. So yes, we're looking at the other projects. They will not be disregarded. There will be a lot of attention paid to them, and there are already people paying attention to them. But we will do that also incrementally and systematically, and according to we have created a budget, and we've got budget for those projects, and that's what we'll approach them that way.
Okay, and the important thing for that is to get that uranium handling permit, and then you can realistically start looking at a timeline to get drilling. Is that fair?
Yeah,
okay.
That's fair. The uranium is again a permit. It's called a certificate of registration from the National Nuclear Regulator. Heavily regulated environment. I cannot put people on a drill rig and drill unless that's in place, because then we'll get into a lot of trouble, and we don't really need any trouble right now. So we follow the process, we follow the laws, and that's the key thing to get.
Indeed, and I know it's difficult to talk timelines, but can these things take a long time? Can they be marred with problems
Well,
with regulation?
You're dealing with the government department. Your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
So just to reiterate on at Henry's, the one permit we've got the actual certificate of registration. That's on the one, but the other one doesn't, and that's quite a substantial area. We don't have that certificate, and also. There's just we asked a few questions about the prospecting right that need to be answered, and then we can take that one forward. But we need that on the Henry South. We need that definitely need that certificate.
Yeah. So, Mark, just to clarify there, and I think we just wanted to clarify that. So, for the Henry's project, the project we listed on, which was the old Anglo asset, that permit is in place there to allow us to do that. Clearly, the transaction we were proposing to do with the adjoining license, where there was obviously still a lot of discussion going on there, that requires that nuclear certification, which Theo mentioned. But for the Henry's project, where Anglo have done that feasibility work and where there has been previous drilling and sampling and so on, that's clearly in place, and there is plans obviously to do additional drilling on there. But clearly, as Theo's mentioned, as we've mentioned here, the immediate focus is there on the Beatrix assets, where you've got multiple times the resource with the gold credits and with the infrastructure. So that's the immediate focus, and rightly so. Shareholders would, I'm sure shareholders would prefer to see us putting money in the ground to get ounces and pounds of uranium out, as opposed to increasing that resource base up there at Henry's, which will happen, don't get us wrong. But the immediate focus has to be on realizing cash flow and realizing value from a brownfield asset with significant potential.
Okay, thank you.
Just to add to that, again, as Jason said, on the Anglo asset, that's where we are currently and in progress making a mining right application. That's where we have an application for a mining right. So we're not sitting on our hands, and there's a lot of data there that we've got that we can use for that mining right application. And that's essentially we haven't abandoned it. We're doing a lot of work there.
Okay, but it's more like Henry's is a longer term project. As Jason said, Beatrix is the priority.
Yeah.
Okay, just a couple more questions on this. The first one I've got is, has a BBBEE, which is a broad-based Black economic empowerment partnership, been identified for Henry's?
That's already in place at Henry's. We already have a BE partner there.
Okay. Good. Are operations awaiting completion of the Eagle uranium permit transfers before commencing work? I think we've pretty much covered that, but just put that into context with the Eagle uranium.
That Henry South Eagle uranium, we're still in discussions with the license holder. There's some additional work to be done there, given the DMRE process. So that is something ongoing, which the team up there in the Northern Cape and our team in Joburg are working through.
Okay, thank you. And just finally, on Henry's, groundwork or preparatory work activities completed to date, what can we talk about here in the Henry's area?
Well, essentially, we've got the Henry's report from the old Anglo property. That work's been done. and that's what we're using to do the mining rights. So we as the mining right application progresses, we'll do we've appointed people to do the environmental impact assessment. They'll do some more work in terms of environmental, doing dust studies, water studies, making application for water use licenses. So that work's been done. But geologically, I think we've got enough to make an application for a mining right, and we can continue with that. And in time, we will drill out more resource there on that particular project. But like I said, again, there's a mining right application going in and its associated environmental management plan, social and labor plan, all the other plans that are required by the regulation. And that's we've been working on that as well for the last couple of weeks and moving that forward.
It's important to note, Mark, that you've got access to water, you've got access to power there, you've got the big water pipeline that comes through from the Orange River, you've got a substation on site, we've got the core and sample storage facilities there. We're actually looking at upgrading them there, and our people up there at Springbok are doing that work. So yeah, there is a fair bit of activity which is being done, and as part of that process to get the mining rights. So we're moving away from the prospecting license to go into that mining right application, and that's we're anticipating that initial work to be completed later this month by the team in South Africa in the Northern Cape.
Okay, well, thank you, Jason. So we're just going to finish off with a few questions here on more the sort of high level or the corporate side of it. So the first one that we have is, almost a year ago, shareholders were informed that asset valuations were underway. When can these expected to conclude?
Yeah, those valuation reports will be completed and released concurrently with the listing or post the listing.
Okay, thank you. Is the proposed gold streaming deal dependent on the completion of these asset valuations?
All financing deals, as they relate to the debt side of the balance sheet, are going to obviously involve us at some point giving up security over assets and demonstrating that we have ownership of the assets. So all of that requires those transactions to complete. So yes, that's correct.
Okay. And I know you've talked about sort of offtakes before and lots of offers coming in, but I mean, I wonder if we can just answer this question on, if you can, what sort of discussions have been held to date, both for the gold and uranium?
The gold, there's no gold offtake. You sell the gold directly into the market. On a gold-related basis, there's clearly been approaches that have been made in regards to people looking to secure gold either through streaming, royalty, prepayment transactions. When you see pictures of people queuing up outside the Perth Mint for several kilometers trying to get hold of gold, you realize how important having a physical supply of gold is. So people are after the gold. There's no question about that, but they're looking obviously to secure it at discounted rates. For us to get him to commit gold early on means that you're going to get a higher discount. As Theo mentioned, it's cost of capital. Uranium's very much different to that, obviously, because that is predominantly offtake related, and you've seen a number of groups enter into offtake relationships. Clearly, there is that level of discussions preliminary at this stage, because, as Theo says, we need to be able to demonstrate a very definitive delivery schedule for that. At the same time, what you've seen over the past several months is that whole energy policy in South Africa change in terms of their focus on uranium as a baseload provider. And that has the potential to change the dynamic of the significance of this asset in South Africa. I think there was even an article which came out a month or so ago where Theo was discussing it, and they talked about this project as being a project of national significance in South Africa. And don't dismiss that. There are not that many uranium projects coming through in the world, let alone in Africa, let alone in South Africa. So yes, there is significant demand. The majority of South African uranium was sold into Europe, into the US, back in the 50s and 60s, when there was that huge proliferation of uranium demand. You've now seen a different dynamic for that uranium demand, with more of those reactors, more of those mini reactors. And I think that's going to change the dynamic in terms of how offtake is sold in the coming years.
Okay, thank you, Jason. So this is for Theo. Theo, how many shares do you currently hold in the company? Do you intend to purchase additional shares on market or indeed participate in future fundraisers?
Me, personally, at this point in time, I own no shares in the company.
Okay, that's clear. Would you intend to purchase?
Oh, of course I would. Yeah, of course. In due course, I will.
Okay.
I think it's important as well, Mark, just to point out that the nature of Theo's CEO contract does have equity component to it, clearly. And there is success-based issuances of shares and so on. And then there is, again, an issuance of shares to basically compensate him for him taking on this role. So that is something which, again, we are in a trading restriction position at the moment because of the nature of the accounts. But obviously, post those going out, then the performance-related matters in regards to his contract are going to be finalized, released, and clearly there is a major incentivization for the whole management team and Theo in particular to get this into production. And obviously his whole remuneration is aligned with shareholders in that regards.
Yeah, just to point out what Jason just said, it's not just about me. There's going to be a management team. There's going to be CFO, a proper management team, and we will remunerate them properly. They'll be incentivized properly. But right now, my contract is very basic. And I'm still in the early stages of it, and I particularly like this job. I've been watching with great interest some of the comments on the Telegram channel over the last couple of hours. I see there are a lot of theories and a lot of things being said, and I mean that's pretty normal. Just the one thing I'd like to make clear to everybody is I don't do 100 things at the same time. Of the last 5 months that I've been here, I'd say 99% of my time has been spent on NAO and getting it up and going. I have a small other interest that I look after, but that was never my primary focus during this time. Also saw a comment on the internet about myself delivering a talk in Angola to the Indiama, the Angolan national diamond mining company. I did that in around about June. And people thought I was losing my focus in NAO. That wasn't the case. I actually undertook to the Angolans in January, before I even considered the NAO job, that I would come in and talk to them about diamond mining. So I kept my promise. But I've got no more interest in, or no more work in that regard. My work is now completely focused on NAO Energy Metals and getting it up and running and making a success of the Beatrix 4 project. That's what I'm focused on, just to let you know. So I'd like to see some of those comments now, but I must say to the people, some of them are very original, and keep going. That's what makes a market.
No, yeah, thank you, Theo, for that. Yeah, I've been seeing some comments. So people are saying you're coming across very realistic and honest, which is good. I mean, one point I'll just pick up on it. People have said you've probably seen it. The sense I'm getting from reading some of the comments is that people are now thinking, "Oh, this is a little bit longer off than we originally thought." So I don't know if you can. I know we've talked a little bit on timelines there, but mining, it does take longer than everyone hopes and everyone wants. So do you think it is a bit longer than perhaps people were anticipating? And just a question that I saw come up, if drilling and blasting is 18 months, then production timeline should be something similar. So I don't know if you can give any more on timelines, which I know is extremely hard in this sector.
again, there are things within my control that I can manage. Okay. And there are instructions I can give and work that I can get done that are under my direct control. Then there are things that are not under my direct control. I can get the work done and make an application at the South African Minerals Regulators or at the National Regulating Authority, or provide documents to auditors. Once we've done our work to the best of our ability, we get asked to supplement some of that work with additional information, which we do. That's within our control. But once it's inside a government department, then it's out of my control. In law, there are certain timelines that should be met, and probably in South Africa and other places are either stretched or shortened. So you don't really know. You can't put yourself on a timeline because you're not in control of the people that you're relying on to give you a document. So we're in a we've got to understand we're in a heavily regulated environment. There, just today, I sat with with what we call our radiation officer, addressing the issue of the nuclear licenses that we require. There's certain of the nuclear waste that comes underground that has to be treated in a certain manner. We interacting with environmental companies that do toxic waste disposal. And it's a small amount of it, but it's there. And so you've got to deal with a regulated environment that's not always going to play along with you. You sometimes hit roadblocks, you sometimes get questions that you have to deal with. And you can only answer them as quickly and as efficiently as you can, but then you're in the hands of somebody else. Okay. And I'd love to get this mine up and going as fast as I can, but I know and I understand that there's a whole lot of people that need to be appointed, a whole lot of people that need to be interacted with. Like I said, we're in a rough area at the moment. There's artisanal miners around us in the Welkom area. We have to deal with those issues, with the security issues. We have to deal with the law enforcement authorities. We have to deal with the South African government, with other services. We've got to tell them what we're going to do. It's a regulated environment. It's not as if we're opening a retail store down the road. It's quite it's a huge shaft. It's an 8-meter diameter shaft going down 1,100 meters. It's a massive plant. I don't know if you've seen a photograph of it from the air. So there's a lot of work to be done. And of course, we'd like to get it all done. But on that plant, you've got to, for argument's sake, for instance, you've got to walk the plant. You've got to go and there are literally hundreds of electric motors on the plant. You've got to service every motor. You've got to replace them. You've got to put in their belts. It's a lot of work that you've got to do. It's not impossible work, but it takes time. Okay, and people have only got two hands, one set of eyes, and they can only do a certain amount of work in a day. And that's how we plan. That's why we systematically approach these things, and we do them in sections until we get to where we want to be. And that's basically my answer. So I can give you a timeline once I've assembled a team and we've looked at every single aspect of this project in detail, and we've calculated our timelines, added our downtime to it, our lost hours, and estimated that, and then we can give you a really accurate timeline. So if, as Mark Twain said, somebody asked me a question and I was pleased to tell him I didn't know. Well, it's not as if I don't know, but I don't have an accurate answer for you. Okay. And if you can just give me that indulgence that I can get the initial capital in, we can do our implementation assessment. And we will then give you 100% accurate timelines that you can rely on. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Theo. Just finally, this is probably for you, Jason. This is from the pre-submitted question. Which regards with Quinton AUO, what's the current relationship or involvement? Does he still hold stock in Neo?
He's got some stock, but he's no longer on the board. He's no longer involved. Clearly, we've upgraded. We've got a transaction with Sibanye, an $8 billion company, a top gold producer in South Africa, a top PGM producer globally, a company that wants to get involved, hold a major position in the company, and wants to basically maintain, if not increase, their shareholding. So, I think, every company develops and moves forward. Having Sibanya with us, I think, is a huge plus. And there's been some changes at the executive management level there at Sibanya recently, and both Theo and I have at different times we've met the new CEO, and we're very happy with how Sibanya are moving forward. So a great partner to have with all our business. So very, very happy with that.
Okay, thank you. Well, that concludes all the questions that were sent in advance. I just want to go over just a few things that I've picked up that are clearly the big thing, and then we'll see if anyone has any other questions. But suspension is clearly the big thing that's concerning people, when that's going to be lifted. But we have covered that, and you say you were hoping for it today, effectively. So it's you don't know until it happens, I guess is fair to say. But it comes down to this audit and the accounts. But just on that point, that's obviously been a problem with a lot of companies on the London Stock Exchange in the last sort of year or two. How can you make sure you avoid that problem again for next year?
I think you already heard we've got new CFOs targeted by Theo. There's a whole new management team that's being built up on the back of this asset. So I think that's important to note. I think it's also important to note that this initial audit was just not the audit of the past year. It was effectively the previous 3 years, given the RTO process, which whilst verified by the lawyers, by the FCA, by PKF at that time as the accountants, it still required MKS as the new company auditors to go through a very thorough and detailed and meticulous process. Have we learned a lot from it? Damn right we have. And I think under Theo's watch and under the team that he's building around him to deliver not just the mine, but to deliver the company, then I would anticipate that shareholders are going to be very happy with the direction that this company goes.
Okay, just on that question, we've appointed a dedicated financial controller for now in South Africa. There will be on the Beatrix 4 shaft, we'll have the big five that we'll call a manager mining, manager metallurgy, a resident engineer, a mineral resource manager, and a financial manager, a financial director on the Beatrix in the Beatrix company. Financial manager has got cost controllers, procurement managers. We've got the structure that we want, the number of people that we require, and the systems. Of course, you've got procurement systems, you've got IT systems. All those systems will be in place. We're speaking to Sibanya to see what of their systems we can still use, because I don't want to reinvent the wheel. But when you're talking about financial controls and audits, there will be levels of authority, sign-off required. If there is capital required outside of budget, there'll be a capital application to the board. There'll be all the usual documents that you'll be used to in any mining company. So that is very much work in progress, and the next audit should be a lot smoother and a lot easier than this last one. And as Jason said, it wasn't just a 1-year audit, it was a couple of years.
Okay, thank you. And just another point for me, obviously when you are suspended, you do have a slight luxury maybe that you can talk about cash or indeed placings. So people are wondering what the cash situation is. I think there's senses that it's perhaps not that strong. I don't know if you want to comment on what the cash situation is, and then indeed for future funding or indeed placings, would you want to get this any potential placing way before relist? It perhaps would be a bit counterproductive to relist first when perhaps the market knows what the situation could be. So cash and placings, any comments on that, please?
Cash, we've got access to get us where we want to be, through to the relisting and so on. As to the and I'm not going to advise the balance, but there is sufficient cash and cash availability to get us through to the point where we want to be. In terms of, what is it? I'm trying to think of the right word here. highlighting when and how we're going to be doing funding. I think when we come back to the market, I think there's going to be sufficient news to get. Obviously, we're going to have some people that have been sitting there and wanting to get out, sell their stock. I think given where the company's going to be and what the information the company will likely be able to get out to the market at that time, and the fact that the gold price has gone up, wow, significantly whilst we have been suspended, and the people that we've been talking to over this period, I actually think we're going to be in a very good position when we come back out. And as to the nature and timing of any financings, then the board will make the decision at that time, and the board will make that decision based upon the recommendations from its CEO.
Okay, well, thank you. So that, I think, covers pretty much everything. I just want to see if anyone else has any final questions. You can either put them in the group or indeed just put your hand up and you can ask them live. We do only have at most 7 minutes left, really. But let's just see if anyone has any questions. But thank you both for your time. Very comprehensive. So yeah, with the short-term mindset that we all have these days, what can we expect maybe for the rest of this year? We're going to lift that suspension. I certainly hope so. I don't know if anyone wants to answer that, Jason or Theo, just to give something for people to wait to finish with.
Look, this is not a long-term play. This isn't. Look, I used to be based out of Perth in Western Australia, where you'd go back into an old gold mine, you'd do a cutback, you'd be able to do something where you'd add an extra 2 or 3 years to a mine life. We've picked up a project here, as Theo says, at Beatrix, which has got a 30-kilometre strike. You've got resources in the 100 million pounds of uranium resources and in the million of ounces of gold. I don't think there's a junior gold company on the London Stock Exchange with the gold resources that we have, that we'll be having when we relist. I don't think there's a junior gold company that has the infrastructure that we have, the shaft, the process plant, and so on and so forth. So, I think, yeah, this is a long-term business. We're not here to build a business that's going to be worth 50, 100 million, particularly not when you've got $500 million worth of sunk capital and infrastructure there. So, you've got a mine that operated for over 40 years, okay? Almost 40 years. There's a lot of infrastructure there. There's a lot of resources there. So, there's going to be people that make short-term gain. There's no doubt about it. There's going to be a lot of trading in this stock, but we need to demonstrate over the course of the next 6 to 12 months that this stock is going to be a producer. Okay, and I've seen somebody here say 3 to 5 years. Certainly not. I'm not. People me pumping it, guys. When you've got a great story, you don't have to pump it. Okay, we've got a great story here. We've got great assets here. Okay, people can see that. Okay, you can see the resource statements that billion-dollar companies have put out from this. You can see the assets. You'll see valuation reports on those assets. You'll see the results of the updated work that Theo's doing in terms of an implementation plan. We're not doing a pre-feasibility study. We're doing an implementation plan. Okay, so I think from my point of view, this is not a short-term company here. This isn't going to be a company that has, the 10 minutes in the spotlight. This is a company here that Theo's building, which is going to have a very significant presence in South Africa's uranium sector and gold sector. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. And there's just one question I see. I'll just read it as it comes. How are the completion monies, $11 million, Beatrix and Beta, going to be funded equity or debt?
I'd suggest it's a bit of both. We've got uranium funds that are very keen to get involved. So you've got both sides of the balance sheet that's being there. We will deliver on it. We'll deliver on it. So there. And just to be clear, and I'm seeing some of the comments here, and we're very aligned, this management team, in what we want to achieve. Okay, we're very aligned here. It's not too often that you get an opportunity like this. And I'm very clear. I've never been involved in a transaction in a company that has such a tremendous opportunity like this. And that is why I'm very glad that we've been able to attract somebody of Theo's caliber to come in and drive it and run this show. It's why I'm very glad that we've been able to get somebody like Savanya there that sees something in us, that's there to sort it through. So, we're very aligned in our goals, in our strategy, and in the timelines that Theo's putting forward. So yeah, very happy with what we're doing here. Getting this producing and operating within the next 18 to 24 months. Wow, I was back in Perth in the early 2000s when there was a company called Bannerman talking about getting their uranium mine going in Namibia. And they're still updating feasibility studies. We've jumped several steps. So it's a great position to be in.
You don't have to spend any more money on studies. We have an implementation. We've got studies. They're done. We just need to implement them, revise them, implement them, and get the show going. And just to answer your question on debt and equity and how much money we're going to raise, we've got a lot of people that are offering to assist. The short answer is we'll do what is cheapest and in the best interest of our shareholders in our company. That's the short answer. What's the cost of capital, and what is the person putting up the capital bring, and we'll make a selection like that. And as we get closer to lifting the suspension in trade, the interest seems to be increasing exponentially. So we are, yeah, and I think we're pretty confident of where we are and what we want to achieve and the people around us. And it's been what would I call it, Jason? An interesting 5 months. We had a lot of, it hasn't been easy, but we're still here, we're still breathing, and our hearts are still beating, and we'll get this job done.
Okay, well, on that note, and that's perfect timing, we're just about past, we need to leave it there. Thank you very much, both of you, Jason and Theo, for your time. Theo, I'm looking forward to following the story on Stockbox, hopefully interviewing you fairly regularly as things get unsuspended and you can get active. But thank you for your time this evening, and thank you everyone listening. Anyone missed any questions, please do let us know we are active on X. You can get us at info@stockboxmedia.com, and we'll make sure we put the questions to Theo or Jason when we speak on an interview. But for now, thank you everyone, and good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter, and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.